What is going on, everyone? You know, you'll find me out in the country, what seems like aimlessly driving around to get my abandoned, cool country scenes. But really, there's a little bit of thought behind it. And in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you exactly what my process is to go out and get some of these things. So hopefully you could put in the same process and go out and find some cool abandoned stuff on your own as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the video. But first up, we're going to look at Flickr and then Google Maps, which is usually the origin of a lot of my backroads journeys. So one of the first things I'll do is I'll head on over to Flickr. Flickr is a gold mine of just a massive repository of really cool stuff that you could go and research. So I was looking at a town that's a couple hours away from me called Chester, Nebraska. And I had never been to Chester. So what I do is I throw it into the Flickr just on the search, and I start scrolling, and I'm like, oh, all right, it's a small town. They got a cool auditorium, a cool motel sign. That looks pretty good, right? And then they got this cool abandoned gas station slash like service center, which I also think is cool. And so I'm like, all right, what else is in there? This crazy looking cat. And, you know, looks like an old city hall. And I'm like, you know what? I think I want to visit it. I think more than anything, I want to check it out for these old buildings, that cool old bank, and especially those old signs. So I did my research. Ooh, look at that. That's pretty cool. I'd like to see that. So I'm like, I like Chester, Nebraska. And what I'll do is then I'll go to Maps. I'll go over here to Google Maps, and we'll just type it in, Chester, Nebraska. And I'll find a couple routes to Chester. I'm going to do directions. It gives us a couple different options on how to get there, right? So one of the options is always going down 75 right here, and I've been down that a ton. Another couple options is going to Lincoln and then going south, but I haven't been on this option as much. So that's usually where I start my route, is looking at a place that I haven't really, that I've never been to, but also taking a road that I maybe had never been to. So I'd get to Lincoln pretty quickly on a boring interstate, but then I'd dump off right over here and start exploring these back roads. That's where you find some of those completely, truly unexpected finds. But what's cool is I know that even if I don't find a ton of great stuff, I have a destination, Chester, Nebraska, that I think is going to bring me some decent stuff. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go out and we're going to get some amazing shots. But first, let's go ahead and get our lineup of photography as we dodge the crazy cat. First up, it's the X100v. Amazing, small, versatile. The Om-1, also amazing with the 100 to 400. And then even an old Minolta lens. We got a thumbs up. Let's go do this.
190 escalates to a fight when Alice pulls the sheet.
I'm still on a main highway, but I see some birds flying around way, 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 way far. You can't even see them on the GoPro, and got this first shot of the day. A bunch of pelicans. Believe it or not, pelicans up in the Nebraska sky. Then, of course, we have to consult with the Taco of Luck to figure out, you know, right around here, we're going to dive off and go on some of these back roads. And yeah, I'm sorry for the volume increase there, but I do really love heavy metal. You're going to hear some heavy metal in some of my videos today. But first, let's just grab the X100v and get some beauty. You know, I realized that the light is not the best. However, looking at the maps and understanding what the direction of the buildings that I'm kind of looking to take pictures of later, I knew that I needed to arrive there later in the evening. So even though the light's not the best, it's not like I'm not going to take these photographs, right? And now I saw this spot and I thought, this is a really cool truck and some old pumps and stuff, you know, nice. But the light was just so harsh and so terrible. I almost didn't take any photographs, but I just snapped off a few and marked it on my phone as maybe something to come out to. The only ones I liked were the Texaco signs there, and then on the truck here, it's kind of cool. And then the other side had at least the light on it, and you'll see some photos in this slideshow that I'm editing to be a little bit darker and a little bit like kind of moodier. And the reason why is because I like to do some small town stories, like horror stories. And I think that I can use some of these scenes right here for one of those horror stories. You know, like this guy is especially like pretty horrific. Getting old is super weird because something like this comes along, the old phone booth, and I wish my son was there so I could annoy him with my stories of how he used to have to use these things to call people, and there weren't any, cell phones all over the place. These small towns are just so incredibly quiet and kind of sad sometimes, these broken windows, these old signs. But I found this place called Smitty's, and Smitty's used to be an electronics furniture store. It looks like they survived for many years on selling appliances, and it looks like, fairly recently is when they basically had a hard shutdown. And of course, around back, I find this old contraption. I don't know what it is, but it's obviously some kind of torture device that I can use for my horror story. Most of the shots you see are from my X100v today, but the reason I bring out the Om-1 with the 100 to 400 is so I can get some cool shots like this and get close to stuff that I normally wouldn't be able to get very close to. Those little horror stories that I write are always based on the photography I take, so this cool spot I thought would be a nice little mysterious touch with that tilt blur effect in Photoshop. After a couple variations of the water tower, I went over here to the old school. Old schools are always close to my heart. I was a teacher for 20 years, teaching high school, so I would have loved to have taught in one of these small schools at some point. And I oversaturated these and brought out the blues a little bit just because I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to vibe well with my story that I'm going to write that gives a little bit of a unique feeling to it. Hubble has one of the sadder downtown areas that I've seen in a while. It's just most of these buildings are old and abandoned and crushed in, and you can imagine that these buildings were once, vibrant and people coming and going quite a bit. And it just always makes me worry about these small towns. These shots are pretty terrible on the wrong side of the light, on the wrong part of the day, but I just wanted to document them in case it takes me a long time to get back out to Hubble. Also, those harsh shadows and everything might be actually cool to accompany my story. And right behind me, some beauty, some cool abandoned stuff, old trucks, old cars, some cool color combinations. This was a fun spot to explore. And then, of course, the find of the day, the Death Star. There it is in the back of a truck, a prototype of the Death Star, probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars. All it's waiting for is somebody to fire that truck up and drive it home. You know, I dig this shot, but I messed up the focus. It's a little bit blurry, as you can see here, but the cool part is that I'll just tell them I shot in film and people will be like, oh, that's awesome. That's great. Now for these shots, I switched to a black and white film simulation, something I dialed in on the spot just to kind of mess around, and I think I did a pretty good job. I really like these black and whites, and you know, I don't go into these abandoned houses anymore, but you know, maybe I'll just stick my camera on the inside, which is what I did here. You can see how, you know, there's not much there, but I do love to see that old wallpaper, those layers of wallpaper. It's pretty cool stuff. Photos get just increasingly a little bit moodier and a little bit grainier, just a little bit touch of deeper shadows as I go. One of the ways I did that is in the shooting film and JPEG on the X100v, and I dial in some film recipes in the moment to kind of give me an idea for what I'm looking for. Then when I'm editing, so I'm taking reference points when I'm editing the raw files from the JPEGs that I'm shooting in the field.
Made it.
I had to run around and find the old motel, and that's what I did. I found the motel sign and the old gas station, as you can see here, and just kind of scoping it out first to see where to start. I get farther back and switch the Om-1 with the 400 to kind of compress everything and just give me a little bit of a different look than the 35mm perspective, full frame perspective of the X100v.
Quarter mile, turn left on Ash Road.
Now at this point, I'd already arrived at Chester and I got a couple of the shots that I wanted, but there's still some pins on my maps from previous adventures or previous journeys where I don't think I'd seen these pins. And so I wanted to go back and kind of explore a couple of these spots, like this abandoned house right here, this tiny, tiny little house. It was a cool little find that I enjoyed. Getting low is something I do all the time, of course, if you've ever watched any of my videos. And then, of course, this edit is really dark and grungy, which is exactly what I want with that harsh light at the top. It's just going to look a little bit spooky. So even though there's brightness in it, it's not like a comfortable brightness. The next house was literally like 100 yards away, just right up the street. So I hopped out and got a couple shots, knowing that I still had to get back home. And I also wanted to get a couple shots with that Minolta 135 on the Om-1 to see what that thing could do. This is the old Minolta that gives me a 270 millimeters perspective on micro four thirds. So I got a couple of shots of these windmills with these birds, and it took a couple of my favorite shots. Like this one's really cool. And I seriously dig this one with that lone bird looking the other way. That's fantastic. And then a couple of farm cars for sale that I shot just because why not? And you can see the character of the lens. Everything's a little bit greener. It looks a little different. It was fun to shoot with though. The couple shots that I actually went out and took with it. And then, of course, the sun was setting, so I had to make sure to hurry back home so I could actually see the family before bed.